Hi guys, so I've spoken a little bit in the context of maces about law enforcement and the fact that from my perspective maces used against unarmoured people tend to be less fatal or at least less accidentally fatal than a bladed weapon can be. You know, if you're using a sword, then a little poke here or a cut there could accidentally cut someone's artery or stab them in the heart and they'll be dead, which if your primary job is law enforcement, you don't really want that to happen. Whereas with a mace, you can hit someone all over their body quite liberally and stand a fairly good chance of not killing them. Really, if you want to kill someone with a mace, you're going to have to hit to specific areas of their body, primarily their head, of course, perhaps back of the neck, spine, so on. So that's the reason really that truncheons, batons, sticks were and always have been very popular weapons for law enforcement, where you want to take someone prisoner and get evidence out of them, for example. You don't necessarily just want to kill them. However, there is an interesting exception to that general rule, and that is that perhaps surprisingly, perhaps very surprisingly, in 18th and 19th century Europe, police did obviously have guns to draw upon if there was a very serious riot or a civil insurrection. So, for example, in France, throughout much of the second half of the 18th century and the first half of the 19th century, there was a lot of civil unrest. As represented in the musical Les Miserables, for example, and of course the French Revolution, but in fact there were many small revolutions in different cities at different times. So the police did sometimes have to draw upon guns, but something that's perhaps I found surprising when I first found out is that another thing that the police had at their disposal were swords. Okay, and this is a 19th century, this is mid 19th century, perhaps about 1860, police sword, probably Metropolitan London Police. Now, you might think, what on earth did police want swords for? They had truncheons, and then if trouble was really bad, they had guns. Okay, that's true. However, even in the mid-19th century, when you could get quite serious riots, and the government in Britain and obviously in France and many other European countries did actually have a fairly real fear that the population could rise up and completely have a revolution. Even in those times, there was nevertheless a social consciousness that you didn't, or conscience, that you didn't want to just go wading in and kill lots of your civilians, because that equally could lead to even worse trouble if you were seen to have been more harsh on the population than you should be. Okay, so the sword seems to have filled a niche whereby if things were getting quite serious, you could get a more serious weapon than a truncheon, i.e. sword, but without going to the lengths of using firearms on your population. Okay, so there we go. Police swords existed, and they seems to have been distributed throughout quite a lot of police forces throughout Europe, but in Britain, many police forces were issued with these swords for when there were riots, for example. And in fact, if you've liked our Facebook page, the Schola Gladiatoria Facebook page, then you will see at the top there is actually a picture from the 1860s, 1870s, I think, and it actually shows British bobbies in their characteristic helmets actually training with these very cutlasses, as they were called. Okay, thank you.